Hi, everybody. Dave Walker again. And this session is really, I'm very glad we're having it because there's a lot of conversation going on right now about the digital transformation of small business. And I wanted to invite two people who are intimately connected with that transformation as it goes on. So Ginger Siegel, welcome from MasterCard, welcome.
Hi, David. Nice to see you.
And Jen Premisler, welcome from MasterCard as well.
Hi.
So I will probably do a terrible job of really doing the job description that each of you has. So Ginger, why don't you go first, and then Jen, tell us exactly what you do for MasterCard and maybe a little of your background as well.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, David. We're thrilled to be here today. So I have the privilege of running the small business segment for MasterCard for North America. And really what that means is really driving our strategy to help our partners who are banks and fintechs and governments and acquirers and processors to put the wind at their back so that they can help the ultimate small business owner at the very end of the ecosystem. And I get the pleasure of building out solutions, creating strategies, but then actually helping our clients to execute against them. Prior to that, I was in the financial services industry. I was at Deloitte, where I led payments and small business practice, and then also had the privilege of running small business as an overall segment at a number of banks and financial institutions. So thrilled to be with you today.
That's terrific. Jen, how about yourself?
Hi, thank you. So I have the privilege of partnering with Ginger on a lot of the initiatives. My focus is on global product development and management, which includes product builds from the ground up, also includes partnerships we do with fintechs to be able to bring solutions in that help add value to our relationships with merchants of all sizes. So I really look at small business from the merchant community perspective, not necessarily just the segment perspective. And I partner with Ginger to do that around the world and in North America in particularly.
That's terrific. Well, give us, because I'm not going to presume that everyone knows exactly the products and services that MasterCard sells. Could you guys do kind of a flyby on what exactly is in your portfolio?
Sure. Well, I'll just start briefly. I think what's important is that, MasterCard goes way beyond what people think about us as. We certainly work a lot with credit and debit cards, prepaid cards in the industry. But what we do is we really are a technology company that provides solutions well beyond cards to really move money to help our end users, consumers, and small business. Even things, for example, like invoicing. How do we help small businesses get their own money in quicker? So I think that's a really big piece. People sometimes think of card networks as just cards, but it's really not. And I would say the other big thing we do is as we build things, we do not believe if you build it, they will come. We believe in very extensive research on the small business owner to truly understand what their needs and pain points are. And then we can bring solutions to the table, which I know we'll get into, such as digitization and things like that. So I think those are a couple important distinctions, David, that I would make.
Yeah, and I just add, I have the fun job of working from the merchant needs backwards into what we should create and really thinking strategically about what's coming next. So not necessarily what are they dealing with today? We do a little bit of that, but it's really thinking about what's coming next. And for the medium and small business segment, there has not been enough attention paid to them and what their needs are and how to easily fulfill them in a consumable way at a price point that works, in a language they can understand. And that doesn't require them to spend their whole day thinking about ways to run and grow their business, but allows them to operate their business efficiently and go and get new customers for that business. So I do that for MasterCard. And the really fun part is we've really upped our game, I would say, in the last few years with respect to small businesses and the merchant space. And so you'll hear a little bit about some of the great stuff Ginger's been doing from a digital transformation perspective and things coming down the pike. And then also some trends I'd love to talk about later that we're thinking about. How do we build with small business in mind? And how do we kind of push the limits to be able to help our partners create value?
Terrific. So I had asked you both to come here and talk about these two words that seem to be popping up in so many different conversations around the business to small business space, and that's digital transformation. So I'd kind of like to ground it in, it seemed to obviously expand dramatically digital transformation as the pandemic took hold, and the balance of 2020 really kind of has us, approaching, playing out. And God knows we're all going to be delighted to see 2020 behind us. But talk to us a little bit about what you saw early days, mid stage, now, about the demands that small business were confronting to really digitally transform.
Yeah, I mean, David, the statistics are staggering. They can be depressing. What we saw very quickly from April 2019 to April 2020, so right in the beginning of the pandemic, e-commerce had already increased 202%. Now, that's one stat. The other stat that really caused us concern is that of the 30 million small businesses in the United States, around 30% of them, or 9 million of them, did not have an opportunity or ability to drive a digital storefront, digital service. So we saw early on that there was very major concerns about small businesses where they were shut down because of the pandemic, whether or not they were able to do carry out if they were restaurants, but they didn't have the capabilities of being able to drive distribution and drive another customer channel without their storefront. So those two pieces drove us to start thinking very quickly, how do we help small businesses get online? Now, the 70% of small businesses that are online, many of them are not optimized. And more importantly, which we'll get into, they do not have cyber protection. 80% of small businesses do not have any cyber protection, yet almost 50% of all cyber attacks are happening on small business. So we knew if we were going to build this, we had to build it surrounded by the safety and security. And I'll let Jen, add to that as well.
Yeah, so I think those points are really important. And another interesting trend that we saw prior to the pandemic, but that is definitely ramped up in the pandemic and will stay, is small businesses selling on marketplaces. So one of the things we've been hyper focused on as well, in addition to helping them because of this e-commerce and digitization transition and the need to get on easily and all that, is thinking about where they're going to work from an e-commerce perspective. Are they going to have their own site? Are they going to use a platform for that? Are they going to stay just brick and mortar, or are they going to engage in a marketplace platform type of play? And the statistics showed that originally pre-pandemic, by 2023, we were expected to have 60% of small businesses selling online as sellers. And now it looks like 60% to 70% will be achieved about 2 years early. And that will mostly happen, most of the e-commerce will happen on that marketplace. So it's really important that small businesses think of the various channels and avenues they have to become digital and sell digitally.
So you mean that next year that you're going to see up to 60 to 70% penetration of digital capabilities in small business? There's
particularly on the marketplace channel. So I think by probably that's the acceleration will show that in about a year, you'll have 65% roughly of all e-commerce transactions globally happening on a marketplace. So what does that say about small business when the ramp on small business e-commerce is happening pretty sharply right now as well?
And David, what that really means though is the biggest concern is the gap in knowledge that many small businesses have. So that is why the education right now that's provided to them, which is really tough. If you're a small business owner, you have got so much on your plate right now, but through some of our digital resources like Digital Doors, which I'll explain later, a lot of that is also around a digital curriculum. How do we help them understand how to market themselves? What does social media marketing look like? How do you measure the impact of that? So I think what Jen's talking about is this whole new concept of a marketplace and how quickly they're moving to it. Many of them move to it, not even with all the knowledge they need. So that's another really important responsibility we have with our partners.
So I have a number of questions that pop up from that. So I apologize. I'm going to hopefully not throwing anything at you. But Can you describe some of the gaps that you are noticing specifically that small business have that, gives you pause and says, boy, this is not going to be pretty if they don't fill these gaps?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I would say one of the biggest gaps, which I brought up before, is protection, safety, and security.
Mhm.
Small businesses know that they need to keep safe, but they don't really know. There's a misperception that small businesses have: a cyber attack will not happen to me. When in reality, we have seen 10% of businesses go out of business because of cyber attacks. The average cost of a cyber attack to a small business can be upwards of $200,000. And if you think about a small business prior to COVID, the average small business had about 27 days of cash on hand. You
Mhm.
bring in COVID, stores shut down, $200,000 bill on the table, it could annihilate them. So I think that's number one, is safety and security. Number two is how important digital is. Many small business owners lived within their storefront. They lived on Main Street, and what they didn't realize is the importance of digital Main Street. Now, all of a sudden, they saw it. I got the most exciting LinkedIn note. I had done a presentation for the city of New York for their Black business owners. And I got a note from one of these entrepreneurs that was listening, that had not had a digital storefront, was really thinking about whether she could keep her shop open. Due to our presentation, she utilized our resources, now has a fantastic website, and is already seeing traffic. It's little things like that people weren't thinking about, that if they don't, that's why 1 out of 6 small businesses are going out of business. So those are just a couple, and I'll lean over to Jen for some other thoughts she has.
Yeah, so I think that's the big piece on digital. The education gap is humongous, and for those that are looking to sell in like a more of a marketplace type of channel versus having their own website, it's a little easier because the marketplaces themselves will provide some education and pretty easy tools to get selling. However, there's pros and cons for which channel you decide. They all have a lot of pros, but some take more work than others, but some have more upside than others. So for a small business, it's important, and they're not exclusive. So you can sell through all the channels, and you probably should if it's appropriate for you and you can keep up with that. But you should leverage them in a way that makes sense for your business. And different small business industries and categories and verticals are going to look different, right? So the other thing I think that small businesses need to keep in mind is a website does not, or a digital presence does not just mean a website, or it doesn't just mean a store. It could be some combination. It could mean that let's say you're a restaurant and you want to make sure that you have ordering and reservation capabilities and receipt capabilities online, but you don't necessarily want every piece of your menu up there, or you're not ordering in advance. It's sort of order and go. You have those options when you're creating as a small business, and using education tools to figure out what to do is helpful, and using partners who can make that easy for you, commerce platforms and the like, is really helpful as well. And so when Ginger talks about digital doors, and maybe now is the time, all the suspense, because I think there's a lot of tools in there that can really help small businesses get digital quickly and grow their business.
Yeah, please talk about digital doors, because I think that two observations that I've heard from your peers. One is that small businesses' perhaps biggest gap when it comes to digital is the creation of a quality online consumer experience. That's number one. And number two, they talk a lot about the as some have kind of entered the space of trying to provide quality education to fill those gaps of small business, they're discovering very quickly that small businesses need prescriptive advice. They don't need conceptual advice that it's a good idea to have an e-commerce site or to engage a marketplace. They really literally need a step-by-step guide to how to do it, down to the most literal, simple steps. So talk to us about doorways, and talk to us about, maybe in that context, how those things are being addressed.
Yeah, David, I think you just nailed it, because what we did is that we knew that day one that small businesses weren't going to have the time or necessarily the knowledge to go find all these resources. So we built digital doors. And what it is, it's actually available on our MasterCard Main Street Resource Center. when you go into the site, the first thing you see is a digital diagnostic test. So we actually put that business owner through a series of questions, not a lot, but a series of questions that talk about how they're running their business, how digitally savvy they are, how safe and secure it is. And then once we get their answers, we put that up against a benchmark. So we say, look, you're kind of below benchmark. And then what we do is we make recommendations. So if we see that they don't have cyber protection, then we provide alternatives for that. So that's step one. Step two is we have developed partnerships with organizations like Shopify, BigCommerce, and Squarespace. We have tiles and links on our Digital Doors Resource Center, and they can click in and actually set up a site through those partners. Then what we do is we wrap it around cyber protection. So we have two really cool tools. One is called Recon, which will actually test the vulnerability of their online. And that's not just their site, but it could be their email. You know, business email is one of the main ways that bad actors get in. Mm-hmm. We also have a digital curriculum that we put them through at their leisure because it's all online. A really cool thing is Shop Open. If they accept MasterCard, their name of their business, location, and if they accept contactless payments goes on a consumer-facing website, free advertising, where that consumer can say, look, I'm in St. Louis. I want to know if this restaurant is open. And then lastly, we also work closely with our partners, acquirers, et cetera, to help them with getting the ability to accept contactless payments, card on file, because the one thing with COVID is checks and cash. We've seen between a 30 and 45% decrease in how people are paying with checks and cash, and a much bigger increase in online. So we feel that Digital Doors, to your point, it's kind of a step-by-step process. And we as MasterCard, we can negotiate with these groups and we can bring them to the table. And then we provide them in a couple different ways, either direct to small business or through our partners, because as you know, we're a B2B2C company. And so if there's a bank that wants to white label it and push it out, we now have whole governments that want to use it in terms of states. So that's just a little bit about it. I get really excited about it. I'm sorry, because I just think it's really cool and great. And we're really pleased to be able to have these tools.
It's a huge step up and step in. And I think that, you know, the credibility of your brand is so crucial to small business engagement. There's no question about it. So Jen, anything to add? Because I know that you've been very intimately involved in building out not just the product, but also kind of the way in which the product is really brought to market. Can you talk about maybe some of the things that you've observed, but also some of the things that really kind of lend themselves to your product roadmap in the future?
Yeah, so I can't take credit for Digital Doors. That is the brainchild of Ginger and that team, and they've done a great job. But I can talk about the roadmap of future things. And so in addition to thinking a lot about where e-commerce is happening, and that it's going to be happening more and more on a marketplace, we are working on solutions with a number of marketplace partners and marketplace tech provider partners to help small businesses and medium-sized businesses get onto marketplaces in a smoother way without having to sort of, you know, think about each one that they need to reach out to and how they do that, and trying to make the experience a bit more seamless through some, you know, data capabilities that we have at MasterCard that we're working on. There'll be more to come on that soon, but that's the kind of the stuff we're thinking about. Some other things that we're doing, you know, Ginger mentioned working with our partners, and we are a, you know, B2B2C company, and our institutions that have been part of our network for many, many years, and those that continue to, you know, kind of crop up and become part of our network are important to us. And we believe that they can reach the small businesses in a really interesting way. But sometimes they need some technology partners to do that, right? Because they're focused on things like banking and processing and things like that. So we're also partnering with them through some partnerships and investments that the company has done to give them digital platforms where they can engage with their small businesses in a more meaningful way through analytics, through value-added solutions like loyalty, through ERP solutions. So it has some similar thinking behind it to some of the Digital Doors stuff that Ginger and team are doing. it's a little bit different of a channel play and different infrastructure versus something that we're trying to push out to particularly deal with the pandemic, but that is going to be necessary even after. So we have a partnership with a company called Pollinate out of the UK, but working globally now. And they provide a digital engagement platform to banks in particular that the bank can leverage with their small business merchants who are accepting card or electronic payments. And it allows that small business to really engage with their, what we call an acquirer, much easier. It allows them to do it in a self-service and digital way. It helps them access whatever value-added solutions the acquirer bank wants to make available to that small business. And that can run the gamut. So that's not stuck to just payment value-added solutions or fraud or security value-added solutions. That can be anything that a small business needs to run and grow. And so we think it's really important where we sit in the ecosystem to help our customers, which are financial institutions and other partners, do better by their small businesses so they continue to engage in a digital way and grow that over time. There's a number of reasons why it's important for that customers, but it's also really important for the small business. And then there's some other things we're thinking about on the roadmap. So a few things, well, one thing in particular that we think is going to be really important for the next few years and beyond, but you're really going to see a growth in this area in the next few years is going to be around small business capital and how we help. Ginger and I talk about this all the time. How do we help small businesses get better access to capital? And there's lots of forms of access to capital. MasterCard, obviously, with our partners have been in that business through, card programs for a long time. Our bank customers have been, doing lending for a long time. There's a lot of technology companies that are making the ability to get capital more efficient, making the ability to underwrite a small business's risk profile better. And we think that's really an important point, right? So small businesses today from a capital perspective and risk perspective are not necessarily judged as a small business should be. So they're judged either like an enterprise company, which is not appropriate, not the way they keep cash on hand and not the way their business runs, or they're judged as an individual, which is not appropriate either. And there's a reason that individual has created a company to do their business. And so we need to start leveraging our data and some other things that we have at MasterCard to be able to provide better access to capital in a more efficient and appropriate manner. So there's a number of things that we're doing together to think about that. Stay tuned for more on that, but those are some of the things we're thinking about in our roadmap.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to what Jen said is, first of all, we're not thinking of this as just kind of surviving COVID. We believe that our role is to get the wind at people's backs so they can not only survive through COVID, but actually come out on the other side to grow. So I think that's important from a positioning perspective. And with a lot of speaking that I do, I think we have to talk that way. And then the other thing is a lot of what you're listening to Jen say, one of the things that impresses me about MasterCard is that you've got someone in our global acceptance business that cares about small business, which is what I wake up to do every day. Mm-hmm. So the cross-functional power of what we're doing here and how small business is viewed horizontally, whether it's from our CEO on down to all of us, I think that's important. That's how organizations need to think to actually help small businesses versus these silos that develop.
How many small businesses do you think ultimately you'll be able to impact?
Wow.
It's in the millions.
That's a hard question. I mean, look, right now there's 30 million small businesses just in the US alone. And obviously we're a global company. They contribute trillions of dollars in sales. We already touch millions of them through our cards. But my belief is ultimately with all the things we're doing around our non-card solutions, even adding things like installment loans, adding things like access to capital through open banking opportunities. I don't know why we couldn't double the number of small businesses we're helping, because right now, if a small business, their partnership with MasterCard is that they just hold a credit card or a debit card, but I'm a plumber and today I'm sending out manual invoicing. So 2.5 weeks later, I get my money versus if MasterCard can power a solution to help me get my money in 24 hours from Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones. I believe we can touch people in a much broader way to help them get capital, to help them get their own money in quicker, to introduce them to other technologies to grow the way that they grow their business. I do think we can ultimately at least double that. I don't know, Jen, I don't know what you would say, but it's hard.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think it's also geographically specific. So the runway we have to reach those small businesses is different depending on the infrastructure of the country, because I look at it from a global scale. And so I think in the US, we can absolutely do that. And there's a lot of countries where we can absolutely do that because the relationships are drawn. And the technology and like connection points are there that we can continue to build on our traditional or core capabilities and provide more value, to the point Ginger was making, in invoicing or whatever it may be. As you look at some other countries, I think it's really important that they've sort of been a little behind. There's some regions in particular, if you look in Latin America, some parts of Middle East Africa, and to a lesser extent, Asia Pacific, they've really come up the last 10 years. But there's room to build that electronic payment infrastructure. And it's more nimble now than it was when we built it in countries like the US and Canada, where we can leverage then that distribution capability and work with our partners there to reach the small businesses. We are starting though as a company to think more broadly about how we reach small businesses. That's partly how Digital Doors came to be. We recognize, Ginger's team recognized that we needed to be, given the pandemic, we needed to be out as quickly as possible, and particularly from an education perspective. And so while we're also working through our traditional channels, we had to be working at least from an education perspective directly or in a publicly available way. So as we go into markets that are not as mature from an electronic payments perspective, it's important that we leverage the other relationships that can get us there. So we have partnerships with companies. So let's take a Zoho, for example. They provide SaaS solutions to small businesses. We may, or we are working in certain parts of the world to bring those solutions to our small businesses. But we're also working with Zoho, and I think this is where there's a lot of meaningful collaboration and partnership available through a bunch of partners we have, Salesforce, Intuit, you name it, where we can leverage those relationships that they have with small businesses who are not accepting payment and still get some of our non-card solutions to those small businesses. So thinking more broadly about that as partners and who we can be working with. Governments, of course, are always a partner that we're looking to work with, community organizations, now marketplaces, because the other side of a marketplace is sellers. So all these different types of ways that we can reach a small business is important. I don't know what the number will be, particularly globally, but I do think that, you know, doubling those that we can reach when it's not necessarily about a transaction and it's more about a value added solution that helps them run and grow their business is quite possible.
And MasterCard just committed $250 million to help small businesses. So they are certainly in this to help as many, you know, small businesses as they can. And I do want to double click on something Jen said. You know, MasterCard obviously is an amazing technology company. We're really smart. We can build a lot of stuff, but we believe very strongly in partnerships. So when my research had shown me that small businesses need help managing their customer base, I didn't decide that we were going to build a CRM system. We went to Salesforce, and they have an amazing CRM system called, you know, Salesforce Essentials for Small Business. And we partnered with them to provide that as a core benefit on our cards. Same thing with accounting software. We knew that one of the top concerns small businesses had was preparing their taxes. So we aligned with Intuit on QuickBooks and TurboTax, with Microsoft, with 365. And so to Jen's point, it's not only what those partners can do for us, but then how do we cross-pollinate and do for them? And since I've been here, we have so broadened our partnerships, whether it's with the, you know, 7 in Solidarity cities that we have, the work we're doing for minority businesses. There's so many touch points, David, that when you ask how many, I mean, like the sky's the limit, right? Because we're starting to interact with people that have small businesses we haven't even met yet. So I think that's really what's neat about it.
Well, your MasterCard, and again, my hat's off to you. You're using your brand in a way to help, not to just simply sell. And I think that's incredibly critical now more than ever. So you both kind of mentioned this a little bit, and this may be a question that puts you a little bit on the spot, but I really, we've been talking, and we actually have a couple of sessions at this conference about building a diverse recovery. And we've spoken as a collective in the business and small business space that, number one, we're terrible when it comes to diversity amongst our own enterprises, large enterprises that face small business. And second of all, we're not terribly good at promoting the population of a greater population of diverse small businesses. But really, you guys are so obviously intimately connected to this recovery. What can be done to ensure not so much that we hire more diverse associates, not so much that there are more diverse small businesses, but there's really a genuine diverse recovery that is a tide that lifts all boats. What do you think can be done on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start there. And I'm pretty lucky whenever I can get a chance to talk with Jen, since she's a lawyer too. She keeps everything honest. So, but I think it's a really good question. And I think that I can answer that question with stuff we're already doing. So, we have been focused on doing well by doing good from as long as Ajay has been the CEO here. And we have actually put our money where our mouth is. So a really good example is with digital doors. We didn't just say, okay, here's digital doors. We actually went to organizations, Black chambers of commerce, female entrepreneurs. Here's another scary stat, David. 1 in 5 businesses in the United States are owned by females, okay? They provide 4 times as many profit per business as their male counterparts. They only get 2% of the venture funding. So we work closely with organizations like Create and Cultivate and Hello Alice. I'm doing a big event on Saturday. I'm going to have 3,000 female entrepreneurs on a Zoom meeting to talk through these things. We are partnered now with New York City and their small business services group for their Black entrepreneurs. We're doing webinars direct to this group. We're providing digital doors to those groups. And very soon there'll be some other announcements of some really major fintech organizations that we're partnering with. So I think it's really great to talk about it, but if you don't start putting some of this stuff in action, you cannot touch people. And if I can get on a webinar and talk to 100 female entrepreneurs or focus on the LGBTQ community, some of our veterans, that's what really makes the impact. And yet I still go to sleep at night, sometimes kind of sad, because I look up at the ceiling and I think, my gosh, I worked so hard today, but there's so many more to help. So I think it's those kinds of things that we're doing, the commitments from our Center for Inclusive Growth, the $250 million, the $50 million, our focus on touching this segment of the population. It's about the action, not about the talk. So Jen, I'll leave that to you before I start getting all crazy.
No, amen, amen, an enthusiastic amen.
Yes, absolutely.
Walk the talk.
Yeah,
right?
no, and Ginger, all great points. I think one of the things from a diverse recovery perspective is, because I sit in global, we are looking at how we help globally with that recovery effort. So the 250 million commitment was a global commitment. A lot of things happening around the world. In India, we actually said that, I think it was, I might get the number wrong, but it's something like 30 million of that would be spent it's for small business in India to help them digitize, because that was the #1 need there. And there are other needs there that we will address, but just thinking about diversity, it's diversity within a particular geo and within a particular industry and what have you. Obviously race, ethnicity, and gender, but it's also diversity around the planet, I think. And so as we all know, if one piece of the world starts failing, particularly small businesses in a very large country were to start failing because they weren't given access to the solutions that they need, then that's going to actually affect people in, our part of the world or what have you. And so it's really important that we think about how we help broadly, because this is not a world where there are borders the same way as there used to be, right? So a global pandemic showed us that the borders we think we have really aren't there when it comes to, coughs and sneezes. And I think the recovery is going to kind of affect the same thing. So the 2008, the recovery after the 2008 downturn was a little bit different. It was felt mostly in the, super economic power countries. I mean, largely the US, parts of Europe as well. And there was trickled down to other regions, but it was not, felt the same way there. This pandemic has hit different countries similarly in some respects and not similarly in others. And so the recovery that's going to be needed has to be diversity across the world too. So there's a lot that we've done with that commitment in Latin America. They have a similar, not exactly the same, but a similar approach to after seeing what Ginger had done in the US. And there's this called Digital Allies, and it has a lot of the same capabilities, working with all of our partner financial institutions in Latin America. And they actually launched that in all 46 countries in the region, or 46 markets, as we call it, because some of the Caribbean countries are together. And they were able to do something on that kind of scale, which is pretty impressive. And that goes towards our commitment. It also makes things like education and solutions available. And then the work that we did in India. I think the other thing that's really important for a diverse recovery is it's on us as large institutions to ensure that the partners we partner with care about diversity and are diverse themselves to the extent possible, right? You want to have the best solutions possible and the best partners possible, but you should be evaluating them on, do they walk the talk that you do as a company? And as Ginger mentioned, doing well by doing good is something that probably was ingrained in a lot of MasterCard folks forever. The 50, 60 years we've been in operation, but really became a guidepost when Ajay came to be the CEO. And it's something that we do live and breathe, and we do require it from our partners. So we, when we evaluate partners, we look at how diverse they are, what commitments they've made, and we don't necessarily have black and white metrics around it, but it's a consideration. And I think that that's important. You don't want to be so stringent that you're missing an opportunity because somebody was 1 point below on some metric, right? You need to be flexible about it, but it's important. So when from a product development perspective, if we're looking to bring a capability in and we're going to do that either mostly through partnership or fully through partnership, we will ask questions about the diversity of the organization we're working with. We will ask questions about what their policies are with respect to their own customers and how they do things. So I think it's on us as large institutions to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing about, why this is so important. Small businesses in the US employ almost 50% of people in the United States. Therefore, what people forget is that unemployment is often caused because small businesses of all levels of diversity go out of business. And that is why all businesses, regardless of any of the characteristics that we would look at them, need help. I was talking to the CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, and he told me the percentage of his membership that had already permanently gone out of business. When a small business goes out of business, it's not just them, it's everyone they employ as well. So I think it's really important to think about the ecosystem that small business touches, and the diversity that we need to show when we're creating solutions is critically important. You can't do for one and not another.
Guys, just absolutely fantastic. And I guess I'll ask the question, is there a hub, a place where prospective partners, people who want to partner with you, particularly in our B to SMB community, is there a place they can go, a site they can go, a phone call they can make, an email they can send?
Jen, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, if there's a company in your community that is interested in serving small businesses and really businesses of any size, because my remit actually, I didn't mention this before, my remit is for all merchant sizes. So I am passionate about small business. I think medium-sized business needs a little bit more love than they've actually gotten over the years too. And then I work with large businesses as well who have their own needs and have gotten a little bit more love, but still have needs that need to be fulfilled. Anyone can reach out to me. My credentials are jennifer.premisler@mastercard.com. My last name's a hard one. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to do that. If it's specifically for North America that you're interested, you probably should reach out directly to Ginger. So Ginger, I don't know if you want to tell them.
Ginger.siegel@mastercard.com. I also am very active on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out, and, would love to chat. Look, we, as big and great as MasterCard is, if we think we can do this alone, we can't, and we don't think that. So the partnerships that we develop, we're very proud of. And to Jen's point, we're very particular about who we partner with, but we're looking for the best to provide to ultimately our end users.
Thank you guys so much. I mean, again, I can't imagine a greater impact that could be had from one of our business to small business brands than the impact you guys are trying to create and are creating. So thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for talking digital transformation. Thanks for talking all of the different things that you're doing. I think it's very, very helpful as a playbook for our membership and for our audience. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks for
you,
having us.
David. Thanks a lot. Great to see you. Bye.
You as well.
Bye.